Hey everyone, it's Mark, your firefighter realtor and out-of-state investor. Today I have a special guest on. He goes by the Self-Storage Venture, and his name is Kevin, and he's also a firefighter in the Bay Area. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun here, a lot of common themes. And he started his journey in the single-family space, and I think now he's in self-storage. And I really want to hear about this. This is all new to me also, but welcome on, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been a few weeks in the making. We connected on, I guess it's called X now, but we have a fantasy football league going and everything. So, we're all networking out there, but I want to kind of hear your story because I'm interested in, you're kind of the first person I'm probably going to be interviewing that's in the self-storage space.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably like a lot of your listeners and you, I actually started in the single family home space and multifamily eventually. Now this was in 2009, 2010 in Tucson, Arizona. I was going to college.
Wait. So how old are you again? I mean, how old are you?
34.
So, so this is like when you're 20 years old, you started.
Yep. Yep,
Wow.
exactly.
Okay.
So I was
Okay.
in college, 19, 20 years old, and the big recession hits. And it hit Arizona pretty hard, especially Tucson, where I was. And so there was just tons of vacant homes, distressed sales, and they were all right by the university. So a buddy and I just started thinking like, hey, with the prices that these homes are, and it might be funny for people who are just starting in real estate, but I'm talking like $40,000, $50,000 for a, two, three, four bedroom home close to a University of Arizona. With those prices, we could buy them, rent them out to college students because the rents didn't change. It was just the price of the home, um, and do pretty well. So that's what we did. We bought our first home. We fixed it up ourselves. We rented it out to a few buddies, and the rent made the interest payment on the loan. And we are like, okay, this works. And we went and we did it again. And eventually we got some investor backing and we just kept doing it. Fast forward a few years and single family homes transition into small multi units. So now we're doing more, 4 to 10 unit multi unit facilities, and we're renting those out. Fast forward a little bit more, and I decide that I'm going to become a fireman. And it was a passion of mine for a very long time. My brother was a firefighter, and I always had it in the back of my mind. And because I kind of built up this little uh, nest egg of real estate assets, and it was cash flowing, and I could support myself with that, I decided to venture out and follow the passion of being a fireman. I still do it today. I've been doing it for 7 years. And just recently, I transitioned, as you said, into the self storage space. And that's where I am now.
Oh, I love it. So was it was there a reason you transitioned, or were you just getting bored of single family, multifamily, or was there something that kind of turned you on to the self-storage space?
Yeah, well, I think it was a number of reasons. I think one, it was kind of the perfect storm in timing. This was right when COVID hit. Well, when COVID hit, people were given leniency on paying rent, which is great if you're a renter, but if you're a landlord and you still have a mortgage, it's not so great. So luckily, I was okay. The majority of my tenants did continue to pay rent, but I just didn't like where it was going. And should this ever happen again in the future, I didn't want to be stuck. So that kind of spurred me into thinking, well, what other asset class can I get into? I looked at everything. I looked at mobile home parks. I looked at triple net leases. I looked at retail. I looked at office. Looked at multifamily still, and I looked at storage. And I chose storage for a number of reasons, but primarily because storage follows lien laws as opposed to tenant laws. Lien laws make it very easy to evict a customer or a tenant. So essentially, if you rent a storage unit from me, and this is all state specific, but in about 60 days, if you have not paid your rent, I can then lien your items, put your items to auction, have your unit cleaned out, and get another customer in your place that will pay. Now, with tenant laws, you're stuck. You have to go through the end of the lease. If you go do an eviction process, it takes however long it's going to take. Oftentimes, there's lawyers involved, and in the meantime, you owe interest, you owe principal on a loan, and you're not getting any money coming in. So I think that was probably the main reason. And I think second to that was I ended up accumulating enough multifamily and single family homes where it really became a full-time job managing that portfolio, even with property managers in different states managing the assets. Because the property managers are great, but when issues come up, they still come to me for guidance and for approvals. So I was constantly being bombarded with the property managers coming to me asking about certain things, plus being a fireman full time. And it just got to be a full time job. And it felt like I had two jobs. And in the self storage space, everything is very automated. And I can have, 150 tenants like I do in my one facility. But it does not feel like a full time job. It takes maybe a couple hours a week.
What would you say is the hardest entry point into self-storage?
Um, so I think it helped that I had a real estate background. I could at least speak the real estate language. I do think there is language specific to self storage. So just kind of learning the lingo, I think helps. But the biggest thing is when you own a single family home or you own a small multi unit, you own an asset. And that's kind of all it is. There's no real business attached to it. When you own self storage, yes, you own the asset, but really what you own is a business. And it's two very different ways. A lot of times it's two different people that would want to own one or the other. It's someone who wants to own a business versus someone who wants to own an asset. For me, my mind kind of works in both ways. So it was the perfect asset for me because yes, it's an asset. Yes, I know real estate, but it's also a business that I can run, that I can optimize and eventually stabilize and exit out of.
So how does like the financing look for like a self-storage facility? Is this more like you're looking at business type of financing or like I guess residential type financing?
Yeah, so your financing options open up in the self-storage space because you can get a business loan because it is a business. So you can go through the SBA and get an SBA loan on a storage facility. You can also get a commercial loan just like you would on a multifamily through a bank. You can do private financing. You can go raise capital. You can do seller financing. So a lot of the same things you can do in the residential and multifamily space, you can do in storage as well. But you also have that added level of being able to go out and obtain a business loan from an individual or from a broker and finance your facility that way.
Wow, there's so much to learn here. So I mean, I'm just like how far down the rabbit hole did you have to go to get started? I mean, like you said, you looked into self-storage, RV parks, different avenues. Like this, how did, like I said, how did you pick, I guess, self-storage out of all of them?
Yeah, I think, and it was a tough choice because I have shiny object syndrome, right? Like I see a mobile home park and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then I see self storage, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm drawn to all these different things. So for me, it was a mindset shift of like, okay, let's take a minute, let's pause, let's look at all our different options. I weighed the pros and cons of every different asset class, and I just wrote them down on a piece of paper. And I took a few weeks and I kept doing that, and then I slowly started crossing different asset classes off my list for whatever reason. And eventually I whittled it down to storage. And along the way, I was learning about the different asset classes, the pros, the cons, what it would take to get into the space. And what I really liked about storage is that once you own a facility, there's a little bit of a heavy lift in the beginning. I worked a lot when I bought my last facility for the first 2 months. Just the transition of ownership. It's you've bought a business. Oftentimes it's messy because you're buying it from a mom and pop that maybe didn't have immaculate records, or maybe they had customers who were late on payments. So you're trying to fix everything. But after you do that initial heavy lift, storage becomes really easy. And I like that, being that I'm also a fireman and I have a full-time job. And I have two kids, a 3-year-old and 1-year-old. So I wanted something that was easy, that would allow me to also spend time with my family and not be working two jobs like I felt like I was doing previously.
So how many self-storage facilities do you currently have?
So I have one that I own outright, and then I have two others that I'm a partner in.
And the one that you own outright, like, is that close to where you live, or is this remotely done?
Yeah, that's a great question. And another reason I chose storage was because the technology that has been implemented into the self-storage space in the last 3, 4 years is huge. So it allows me to manage a facility that is far away. So I'm in California. This facility is in North Carolina, and I can manage it through software, through technology from California and not have any issues. Now, what I do have that helps me is I have a call center. The call center takes all inbound calls. They rent units. If someone has an issue, they deal with it. So they're not managing the property per se, but they're handling any calls or texts that come in. And I also have what I call boots on the ground. And my boots on the ground is a gentleman that I pay in North Carolina to visit my facility 3 times a month, and he walks through it. I give him tasks to do. Typically, there's not any urgent task that comes up that it can't just wait till the next time he's there 15 days later. And he goes through my tasks that I give him. He completes them at the facility, usually takes him between 1 and 3 hours. And he does that 3 times a month. So between the call center, the back end software that lets me manage it, and a boots on the ground, I'm very comfortable living far away from my facility.
So how did you, I guess, how do you find a self-storage unit or facility?
Yeah, great question. And there's different ways. I would say similar to residential or multifamily, the best deals are going to be the off market deals, right? Direct to seller. So as I'm pursuing another self storage facility, I'm actively making calls to self storage facility owners, sending letters to them, basically saying, "Hey, my name's Kevin. I'd like to buy your facility." And that just starts the conversation, and hopefully you can get a deal from there. Now, the one that I own was actually a listed property. It was listed on a site called Crexi. So Crexi and LoopNet are commercial sites similar to like an MLS or a Zillow, right, for the residential space. So it was a listed property. It was listed more than I was willing to pay for it, but I like just kind of shooting off lowball offers at facilities that I like but are listed too high. I like the facility. I sent a lowball offer. We went back and forth a little bit. It was accepted. I did my due diligence, found a couple things that gave me reason to ask for more money off. Um, I did that. They accepted that price. And so I ended up getting the deal for quite a bit below what it was initially listed for.
So let's go over some, like, maybe some rough numbers, like how many, I guess, units are in this facility.
Yeah, so this one has 143 units.
Is that small, big? I'm not even.
It's about 13,000 square feet.
But
Um,
but would that much units be considered like a big facility, or?
no, I would say it's on the smaller end. Um, you look at some extra space or public storage and some of these big institutions, right? I mean, they may have 50, 60, 70,000 square feet. I have 13,000. But you look at some smaller population towns as well, there may be facilities there that are only 4 or 5,000 square feet. But I would say it's on the smaller end. This particular facility has a lot of smaller units. I have a lot of 6 by 10 units, which is why I have so many units, 143. Typically, if you'd look at a facility that's 13,000 square feet, you might see more along the lines of 100 units. But because mine are just chopped up differently with smaller units, because that's what the demand is in that area, I have more units in this 13,000 square foot facility.
And if you don't mind, like, maybe what was, I guess, the somewhat approximate, like, let's saying, list price for this facility that you got?
Yeah, so this was listed at 850, 850,000. So I came in and I offered, well, after a few negotiations back and forth, I ended at 780. So I got the facility under contract at 780. I flew out to North Carolina. I had a 30-day due diligence period. Um, I flew out to North Carolina, went to the facility, noticed that, hey, there's a portion of the roof that needed to be replaced. There was some asphalt work that needed to be done. There's a few doors that needed to be done. So I started tallying up all the CapEx that would be needed. And at my 780 price, it no longer made sense. So I went back to the seller and I said, hey, here's everything I'm going to have to do right after I buy this facility. And here's what it's going to cost me. And I took the high end of that number, what it's going to cost me. And I said, I really need this facility at 705,000 for it to make sense. And there's a little bit of hemming and hawing, but I think at that point, we're 30 days into the deal or 29 days into the deal. She understood exactly what was needed. She didn't disagree with the fact that these items will be needed. She didn't want to start the process all over again with somebody else. And so, she agreed to the 705,000. So, $145,000 off what it was originally listed for.
And so, like you're saying, those are CapEx expenses. Now, to like you're saying, to make it more automated or maybe value add or upgrade the software or technology, like how much does something like that cost you?
Yeah. So for my call center, and this varies depending on the call center, I pay $3.50 a unit um, every month. That's the fee to the call center. Now, for my software that I use, the back end software that has all the customers' information, I can rent units. It has a website that's built into it for units to log on, view their profile, all that package. I pay about $350 a month. So those are my two big expenses, the call center and the management software. Um, Other than that, and my boots on the ground, I pay my boots on the ground $350 a month as well. Other than those expenses, everything else is just kind of miscellaneous items that may come up. Once I've finished doing the capex, once I've put the new roof on, once I've replaced the doors that need replacing, then after that it's just minor repairs that happen.
So there wasn't like any upgrades to the facility, like security cameras or
There was, yeah, that's a great question. That's actually part of our little playbook when we go in. So um, it already had gates, so that was great. If it didn't have gates, I would have put it in. What I did do for the gates is I gave everybody, instead of having the same access code, I gave everyone their own individual access code. Now, what this does, and it gets a little complicated even above my head sometimes, but somehow through the cloud, right, this access code is linked to my management software. Now, my management software knows when someone hasn't paid rent. When they haven't paid rent, their code no longer works. So they can't get into the facility. So typically what happens, it's the 7th of the month. Anyone who hasn't paid, their code stops working. They go to the facility to check on their unit. They can't get in. They call center answers the phone. Well, the reason you can't get in, sir, is because you're behind 7 days on your rent. We'd be happy to take payment over the phone. They take payment over the phone. Within a couple minutes, their code works and they can drive in. So that's one of the technology advances that's come a long way in the self-storage space that allows me to manage it remotely and not have to fight collections because people just can't get in if they don't pay. So gates, individual codes, cameras, we added cameras just for security purposes. And other than that, I mean, they didn't have a website. It was mom and pop. There was no website. There was no Google My Business page. So we allowed for people to rent units online, whereas before they would have had to call. So now they can just go online from the comfort of their home, log in, rent a unit. And that's really, I think, kind of propelled our occupancy from when we started. It was around 60%. Well, now we're at 80% 2 months later. So 20% occupancy increase, most of which have come from online rentals. But other than that, those are kind of the main integrations and optimizations that we've made.
like so what would be maybe is there any, it sounds like oh, I don't know if perfect is the right word, but it sounds like a very flawless system. Like, is there any downside? Like, I mean, a lot of people, they maybe AI is taking over a lot of things in the industry, or, do you worry about, like you mentioned, public storage, a bigger, self-storage facility coming into the area?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think that supply and demand is definitely plays a large role in where your rents can be. And so I made an offer on this facility that made sense with the current supply and demand. Now, if some big, large new facility comes in and starts taking all the people, I may have to drop rents in order to compete. So that is a danger. That being said, with the demand where it is, and being that this is a smaller town, I would find it unlikely that a big REIT or institution is going to want to come play in the space because the demand isn't really there. And it's just too small a population city for them to spend time in. Typically, what I've found is that the REITs, the institutions, the CubeSmart, the public stores, the extra space, they want, maybe a minimum of 20,000 population for a city. Most of the time, much more than that. They're in primary markets, moving a little bit more into secondary markets. I'm in, and I focus on what I call tertiary markets, which is population of 1,000 to 20,000 people. And I do that so that I don't have the competition of the big guys. Because I don't want to play in their space. They can have the San Franciscos and the New York Cities and the LAs. They can do that. I'll take the more rural areas.
So now that you kind of got into this space, now looking back on your journey, like if you were to, I guess, start over, or if you're, 20 years old again back in college, do you think you would have jumped straight into self-storage, or do you think, like you kind of touched on it, like people kind of have to do the single family home in a sense as a stepping stone, and it's a good foundation to get started with?
Yeah. Would I have gone in self storage knowing what I know now? Yeah, I probably would have. I mean, the self storage space has absolutely exploded since 2010. The return on my investment would have been much greater than what it was for the single family homes. That said, I was naive enough to start buying single family homes when no one else was in 2010, just being 19 years old and just saying, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So in that moment of time, I think I just got really lucky of being young, being aggressive, being naive, being lucky, and buying at the right time. So I wouldn't change it because I learned a lot. But if I was looking at it strictly through where would I have made more money? Absolutely. If I had just jumped into self storage and started owning that space, I would have definitely made more money along the way. Um, but I've learned a ton, so I wouldn't go back and change it.
I know you mentioned also you're in the fire service, and you have a passion for that. I mean, do you think any of what you learned in the real estate side, or even like, have they kind of or kind of transitioned over to each other and helping you succeed on each side?
Absolutely. I think that's the coolest thing about the fire service, man, is that you have all walks of life that come into the fire service. You have people that come from the trades. You have people that come from Fortune 500 companies. You have people that come from, like me, like real estate investor, a little bit of construction background, right? And you just bring all these skills into the fire service. And then when you show up on a call, depending on the call, you pull from all these different people, right? And everyone brings something to the table. So I think, yes, my background in construction and real estate has absolutely helped me in the fire service, construction especially. And just as simple as it sounds, like just knowing single family homes and how they're laid out and how they're built. Well, now one of them catches on fire, and I'm pretty good at being able to tell where I am in a home because I've built these homes before. I know what they are. I know, how long I have in that home before I need to start, being a little worried. Is it, what type of construction is it? Things like that. Now, on the flip side, has the fire service helped me in real estate? Absolutely. I think what the fire service has done is allowed me to stay calm under pressure. Um, it takes a lot for me to get completely spun up. And that is a huge asset in negotiations, in just staying level headed when you're talking to people, when problems come your way that you don't expect, just being able to take a deep breath and say, okay, cool, here's a problem. Now let's go find a solution. Let's have fun finding a solution instead of being overwhelmed by the problem. Uh, so yes, to answer your question, both have helped in both industries.
I love it. I mean, so what does the future hold for you? Do you see, so what is your guys' retirement plan? Do you have to do so many years? I guess how's your pension set up? Or do you guys have a pension? I mean, are you going to do your full maybe 25 years in the fire service?
Yeah, so my wife and I talk about this often, if that still makes sense. So we do have a pension. It is CalPERS, and they've recently changed it, and I got hired actually right after they changed it. So it used to be that you could retire at 50, and for every year you worked, you got 3%. So if you worked for 30 years, you would get 90% of your salary, and you could retire at 50. Now what they've changed it to is 2.7 at 57. Um, so you can't retire until you're 57 now. And instead of getting 3% of your salary for every year you work, you get 2.7, which is a big difference, especially in the fire service. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with having firemen go until the age of 57. Depending on where you work, that can be a big toll on your body. Um, so am I going to stay the whole time? I think that's very unlikely. Um, I think I'm fortunate enough to where, I've built something and can continue to build something while still working and doing a job that I love. I don't want to leave right now. But if it ever gets to the point where it's taken away from my time with my family or my time with my kids, and it does make sense to leave, I'll leave that before I leave this.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we maybe differ a little bit. And I think it's more because I'm starting this financial freedom journey, I guess, later in my career, where you were already kind of doing it before you got into the fire service. And I think that's why I'm very passionate about helping the younger guys or people starting earlier or getting that foundation set early in their career so they can keep that kind of drive and passion for the fire service where like you said, I mean I still love the job. It's just however my I guess my goals and focus is a little bit more on this financial freedom side and helping others. And but yeah, it's a great job. It's a great career, and I agree to everything you said. I love it. It helps keep you calm. There's so much different walks of life in the profession we have, and we got to make fun of police officers and stuff
That's
quite
right.
a bit. And I don't know. I know that was gonna be my next question. Like, did you ever take the police exam?
Well, what do all police officers and firemen have in common? They all want to
Well,
be firemen.
that's what I try to tell them. Yeah. So we actually have a couple of guys at my station that started their careers on the police side
We
and
do too.
yeah.
We do too.
But
I did not take the police exam. I think that's I'm not built like that. I don't think I would do well in that career. I do hear more about police coming over to the fire side than I ever really hear about
oh,
firefighters moving to the. I
I
haven't heard that
I
ever
have yeah,
actually.
I have never heard of a fire guy going over to the police side. The only
Yeah.
re but the one thing, the one of the police guys, or he was police at my station, is with fire now, but he started police because they're always hiring. And the fire side, it takes longer to get in. So his grandfather, who was in the fire side, was like, hey, just start your retirement system because it's the
Hmm.
same system. He's like, just take the police exam, go that route, and then keep trying for the fire side when the test comes up. And but at least your retirement, your years of service has started. So that's kind of why he started on the police side.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a play for some people, and I think we were talking a little bit, right, that the retirement carrot kind of gets dangled out, and it's just like in my situation, the retirement's less and less and less than it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. And it's not ever going to get back to where it was. It's only going to get less. And so that carrot, it doesn't look so good anymore when you get hired. It's like, okay, now I've got to do my 37 years, and I get what? I get way less than I would have. So I think, to your point, being able to at least supplement your retirement and have the knowledge to invest in real estate, or maybe it's not even real estate, maybe it's stocks, maybe it's crypto, maybe whatever it is, right? But if you can try as someone who has a retirement, whether you're a teacher or you're a firefighter or you're a police officer, to supplement that retirement in case it's not what you think it is, and there's a chance it might not be 30 years from now. I think that you would be prudent to do that. And just like you, I love helping people in the fire service. I have people that, just because that's what I grew up with. I've known this for a long time. They ask me questions about real estate. I'm always happy to help people. But I think we can do better in the fire service as a whole as helping the younger generation be more financially prudent and set them up for success to where they're not reliant on just their retirement come 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I try to tell them. I tell them you can have a great, 10-year, 15-year career and be
Mm.
done if you set it up properly. And worst case scenario is you have to do your 25, 30 years in the fire service. And that's, like you said, it's still a great job. It's going to be a lot of fun. And that's the worst case scenario. But if you plan and prepare well, you still can have a great 10, 15-year career and get out while you're young. And like you said, spend time with your family or whatever other passions that you may have.
Yeah, I think it's all about just opening doors. And I think I never, and I want this for my children too, is I never want them to feel like a door is closed. So I don't want them to be reliant on one thing. I want them to be able to open as many doors as they can and explore as many different avenues as they can and reach success in whatever that definition means to them. And maybe it is being in the fire service for 30 years. Maybe that's exactly what an individual is meant to do, and that's awesome. That doesn't mean that they can't open the door to some of these other things that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I love it. I'm glad we got to connect on social media. I don't even know how we actually connected at first. I forget
I
already.
think I added you. I think I saw the firefighter headline, and I said, okay, I got to see what this guy's all about.
Yeah, and I saw self-storage. I said, what? Let me go
Yeah,
yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Before you go though,
yeah.
I always ask, my guests, kind of, and you kind of touched on it already, so I'm pretty sure I know what you're gonna say, but maybe like what superpower do you think you have that kind of helped you in this journey of financial freedom, real estate, and even the fireside?
Yeah, man, you got a lot of them behind you to pick from. But I would say my superpower is it's probably just coming up with creative solutions to problems. Um, and again, maybe that's the fireman in me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of joking. Like we get called when nobody else can figure out the answer to the problem. Like, even when the cops can't figure it out, they call us, and then we have to figure it out because we can't call anybody. So I think I've taken that mentality into real estate, and I think it actually started in real estate. And it was like, okay, there's a problem. Let's find a creative solution on how to fix this problem, and let's not let this problem stress us out, overwhelm us. But let's have fun with it and see if we can't come up with a solution. So I like it the most in structuring deals. I love negotiating deals, structuring deals. I think so many people miss out on opportunities that could be deals because they're set on just one or two ways that deal can work. I think every deal has close to infinite number of ways that it can work, and it's just finding what those are and finding one that matches what you want and what the seller wants, or vice versa. Um, and so I enjoy that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no incidents the same, no fires the same, and
Yep.
you just get on scene and you got to kind of figure it out. And I think just making decisions is a key component. You can't just sit there and try to analyze it completely, and sometimes you just got to make a decision and roll with it. And as long as you kind of can back up why you did it, that's what you got to roll with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Being decisive, especially as a first responder, but also in real estate. If you have a reason for why you did it, that's all that matters. Just go with that decision. Um, and also listen to your gut, right? I mean, I think in both walks of both sides of the coin, the real estate and the first responder, your gut tells you a lot, and I think being decisive, going with your gut, having a reason for it, like you just said, are all things that you absolutely need to do, and they're going to make you successful.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And before you go, kind of maybe some selfless promotion on where people can connect with you if they want to reach out, and how can they find you?
Yeah, I'm actually off all social media except for Twitter. And I just started the Twitter not that long ago. So I'm just storage underscore ventures. So at storage underscore ventures. But of course, reach out on Twitter if anyone has any questions or they're just getting started or they want to connect. I'm always happy to connect with more people. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I bet you're gonna get a lot of people. I mean, self-storage does sound like kind of a great opportunity with a lot, not too much downside to it.
Yeah, so far it's been good. But if once I have all these downsides, which I'm sure I will, I'll definitely keep you in the loop with those too.
All right, man. We'll do this again. We'll catch up once we play maybe our fantasy football matchup, and then we'll kind of go over that and kind of talk some shit to each other.
There we go. I like it. Thanks, Mark.
All right, man. Thanks, man.
All right. Have a good day.